Hello, this is Jennifer Marshall. We are now on day 4 of our sourdough starter. Yesterday I discarded my starter and fed it again, and I again have a really nice rise. My tub, my jar, is a little bit wider than the original one that I had it in, and so the rise is perhaps seems to be less, but actually there is more sort of surface area. So really and truly what's happening is this, that in my kitchen it's quite warm. Actually I leave it in the pantry and it is quite warm in there. It's about 23 degrees. And so when you have a warmer environment, you're going to have a faster rate of fermentation. So if you are not yet satisfied with your fermentation, do check a few things, because whilst I am posting these videos, I am getting quite a few questions from various people and some photos of their starters. So a few things to think about is this: what type of flours are you using? Are you using strong flours? What I mean by strong flours is this: are you using a strong bread flour, which is a white flour, which is normally high in protein? Are you using whole wheat flour? And what other types of flours are you using? Perhaps one should try and avoid the 00 flours or the pastry flours. Those are called, they're sort of lighter flours, and so their protein level is not as high. However, having said this, if you can't get hold of your strong bread flours, it's okay to use it. It just, perhaps fermentation will take longer. And you might also need to reduce on your water content, your water amount, so that if you have a lighter flour, that means you're going to get more of a watery or more of a liquidy texture. And so it's quite important to have a texture that looks like thick yogurt. I think it's perhaps, for me, the best way to explain it, because a thick yogurt is not too liquidy and it's not too thick. So you have that kind of consistency where, and so we need to kind of replicate that in our sourdough starter. With whole wheat starter, it's good. I like whole wheat starter also because it absorbs more water, and so it makes the texture thicker as well. Whole wheat is not so difficult to obtain nowadays, so it should be relatively straightforward to get. And so what I'm going to be doing today is literally pretty much the same thing that what I did yesterday. Despite the fact that I had another rise, I would like to once again discard my starter and feed it again. And I will not keep the discard. I think that it is important to strengthen the starter and make sure that it has enough volume, it's rising well, it's enough fermentation. And then most probably by tomorrow I'll start keeping my discard in a separate jar, and that discard will then go in the fridge, and I will cover the discard. I'll cover it loosely, by the way. I will not do it airtight, because discard is still breathing and it still needs oxygen, and also it ferments at a very, very, very slow rate. So I'll keep the discard for my other things that I do. So for example, I do pasta with my sourdough discard, I do muffins, I do waffles, pancakes, cakes, so many things. The list is endless, and so having discard actually really, really helps. A few days ago, I posted my method on how to make a pizza dough recipe with using discard. So by having discard, one can also make leavened doughs like pizza, and so it's always good to have it in the fridge. So what I'll be doing today is I'll be discarding some of it. I'll be using my sort of original jar. I will take 100 grams, place it in my original jar that I sort of started my sourdough in. So at this point, I'll take 100 grams of my sourdough. Okay, I've got 20 grams more, and then that's it. Ooh, I was just going to drop my jar. And then I'll be feeding it with 100 grams of flour, so 50 grams of whole wheat flour and 50 grams of strong white bread flour. When I say strong white bread flour, it means that the protein content is of a higher you have higher protein content, sorry. So you have higher protein content. That's basically what it means. So 50 grams and 50 grams. Now, if you don't have these flours, it's absolutely fine. You want to, for example, make a spelt and rye sourdough starter, it's fine. If you want to, for example, make a buckwheat and a white bread flour, it's absolutely fine. If you just, so it's kind of, it's up to you what type of flours you're using. It's just, I think it's also important, as I said yesterday, that it's important to start learning about your grains and understanding what grains are going in your starter. Some people like to feed their starter twice a day. For me, the way I see it is that we have all very busy lives, and feeding your starter once a day should be fine, should be enough. Less than once a day is not enough. So please make sure that you feed it at least once a day. There are people, however, who do feed their starter 2 times a day, 3 times a day. So the more the starter is fed, the more it loves it, the more the microbes love it. So if you want to feed your starter, for example, in the morning and then again in the evening, it is absolutely fine. What you will get faster fermentation. Just make sure that your texture is right, you are keeping it in the right environment, that the temperature of your ambient temperature is correct, it's not too cold, it's not too hot. And your jar obviously is clean and sterilized, and these are sort of the obvious things. And so if you feed it more often, let's say 2 times or 3 times in one day, you're going to get a faster rate of fermentation. Now, to this starter, I will add 100 grams of tepid water. It's pretty much, we are following the same routine every day. It's just what I'm doing now is strengthening my starter. Once again, just because my starter has fermented and has risen and has grown and so on, does not mean that your starter has to ferment in 4 days. It might be fermenting in 7 days, in 10 days, because we are all living in different places, in different countries perhaps, and our ambient temperature is different. My kitchen might be will have a different ambient temperature than yours. And that's why a starter is unique. Every starter is unique. Believe it or not, there is a library, a sourdough library in Belgium that has thousands and thousands of types of starters, and that they feed them according to every owner's specifications. So various well-known bakers have sent their starters to this library, and there is a curator who takes care of all the starters, and they're fed exactly as each owner informs the curator. So here we are. So my starter is slightly on the thicker side. I mean, I could add a little bit more water if I wanted to. So I don't know if you can see it. So this is kind of a really thick starter. I could give it a little bit more water. Thicker starters take longer. This actually could be called a stiff starter, even though I have fed it exactly the same amount. I have a very strong bread flour, and I have also a very strong whole wheat flour, so it makes it even thicker. So I like stiff starters because they take slightly longer to ferment, but at the peak of fermentation lasts longer. So when you have a liquidy starter, a more sort of runny starter, the peak of fermentation lasts much less. It rises and it goes down very fast. However, when you have a thick starter, it rises at a much slower pace, but it stays at its peak at a much longer pace. So, it's kind of stating the obvious, but on the other hand, it's good to say it. Okay, so what I'll be doing is I'll be covering my starter once again, keeping it in my pantry. It's again about 23-24 degrees in the pantry. And I'll also, by the way, mark my spot where my starter is sitting. It's very important. So I kind of remind myself where it is. And hopefully by tomorrow I should get another rise. Tomorrow what I'll be doing most probably is I'll be discarding, but I'll be keeping that discard because I think by this point I can start keeping the discard. Today I won't keep the discard because I just want to make sure that my starter is strong enough and fermented well enough that I can keep it. I think this is basically it for day 4. If your starter is taking longer, just keep on discarding and feeding, but ask yourself, what is the texture like? Is it too liquidy? Is it too runny? And so these things will help you understand your starter a little bit more. So if you do have any questions, of course, do send me your photos, a message or a comment in the post, and I or some other members of this group will also be happy to help you or give you some feedback. Okay, take care, and I'll be back for day 5 for tomorrow. Take care.